Hello everyone, today we are working with cues. So we've learned how to patch lights into the lighting system. We've learned how to work with channels, how to put channels into groups. We learned a little bit about submasters, not a lot, but a little. And now we're going to learn how to use channels in order to write light cues. And remember that light cues are the individual lighting looks that a lighting designer creates in order to help tell the story of what's going on in the play or musical or whatever it happens to be. We can get real esoteric about lighting design, and I can wax philosophical about lights all day long, but we have to know a little something about the technology part in order to be able to be effective communicators as lighting designers. Some of you may decide that you really like programming and that you really love the computer and the numbers part of it. As a lighting designer, I have to learn the numbers, but it's so that I can communicate the ideas that I have in my head effectively to the people who help realize the vision that we're looking for. So to me, today, my most favorite part of being a lighting designer, and that is creating the light cues. So hope you got your workbook with you. Workbook? What did I say? I hope you have your workbook. We're going to learn how to write some light cues today. All right. Okay, we're back again, and today we're going to start writing some light cues. So again, we're still working with channels, but we're going to tell the system what channels we want to bring up, give it an intensity, and then record those looks into what's called a lighting cue. And typically those are played back in order. We want the show to be executed the very same from night to night to night. And so we have a tremendous amount of control over the way lighting control works today. Particularly, as different than we used to. The very first, if you remember, the very first show ever to have computerized control on Broadway was Chorus Line in 1975. Well, imagine the complexity of lighting cues they were able to do when they started to get computerized control. This is the LS8 console, which is the console that lighting designer Theron Musser specified to run the lighting cues for a chorus line on Broadway in 1975. How about that? And then think today about a show like Hamilton, which likely you can watch on Disney Plus, or maybe you've seen the show live. Very complex and quick and fast-moving lighting cues, and we can make those lights do pretty much anything we want to, and the same looks every single night. And that's the great thing for a lighting designer, is it's repeatable. Okay, so let's use our channels that we've recorded in. So we want to be where we're still using that same file that we've been working on the last couple of lessons. So let's record some cues. Okay, so we're going to take group 2 at 30. Whoops, I need to be over here. Group 2 at 30%. Enter. 8 at 35. Enter. 2 plus 5 plus 6 at 35. Enter. You see all my intensities are coming up in the channels that I'm requesting. Now I'm going to type in record 2. Enter. And you see I didn't tell it to record Q2, did I? But it knows if I'm going to record something, most likely I'm going to want to record a light cue, unless I do something else. Could I type in Q? I sure could. But recording groups and recording submasters, they all start the same way. It's just that the system thinks you're going to record a cue most often, and they're right. So it defaults to saying Q. Okay, now I'm going to go back and continue working with these channels and record a new cue. You can see that all of the information that was in red, which indicated those channels had been selected, are now blue. That is part of the color code convention that ETC uses. We're going to talk about those here in just a minute, and I'll show you a little graphic that describes what the colors do. But blue color, the blue color means that the channels, those channels have gone up from the last cue. So the intensity has increased from the cue before, is what blue means. So you could be looking at your screen and that all the different colors can kind of tell you what those channels are doing from cue to cue. Okay, so I'm going to take 2 plus 6 out, group 2 at 60. So we increase the intensity there. 31 plus 32 plus 36 plus 37 plus 41 plus 42 plus 46 plus 47 out. So I took all of those channels out, and I'm going to record Q3, enter. So you can see in this cue that I've now recorded, some of the channels went to green. Green means these channel intensities went down from the previous cue. And magenta means that the intensity has stayed the same from the cue. It's in the workbook. It's asking me to run the first fader with the sub up to 75%. We didn't record one, so we're going to ignore that for now. I'm going to take 1 through 9 out. Clear, 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 clear. 1 through 9 out. There we go. 8 at 50, enter. Record. I don't have a next on my keyboard, but I'm gonna come up here to this, record next. And do you see what happened here? It automatically input Q4 for me as well. So record next means it's going to pick the next available whole number and record that cue. So now we've recorded Q4. So now we can record some cues with time associated with them. The system automatically adds time to these cues. There's a default cue time, which is the amount of time the cue takes to execute when it, the going from one cue to the next. So now I'm going to say clear, 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 clear out my command line. Group 2 at 60. Enter. Group 10 at 30. Enter. Record 5. Time 3. Enter. So we told it that I want this cue to execute over 3 seconds. And we could continue recording cues, but I think you might want to record some cues on your own. The next thing to work on is we could give these cues a label. So I'm in cue 5 right now. So if I hit the L key or label on the lighting console, I can label this particular cue, and it's saying maybe this is where the speech is. So now this cue has been labeled. So when it appears in the playback status list, you can see that I have a label for this particular cue. So these are the cues that we have recorded so far. You can delete cues in a similar way to recording them, but remember you have to hit the delete key first. So delete, and then I could, delete cue 5, enter. You sure? Yes, and then it'll take that cue out of your cue stack. And I'm going to clear out my command line. if we wanted to, now what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to go up to this. Do you see this, the thing that shows a single monitor, this monitor right here, this in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to click that. And so this also gives me this tab display list, but it also gives me the opportunity to adjust my workspace into different columns or different views for my particular monitor. Since you're probably working with one monitor at home, as am I now, I'm going to click the 2 columns version. And you can see, since the PSD list was open, it gives me the PSD list here, and I get a plus sign for my other side, my other half of my monitor. I'm going to click plus, and I'm going to tell it that I want it to show me the live channels table, except I'm going to change the format because I like to see the channel list instead. So this will allow us to execute queues and see what they're doing at the same time. So did that seem clear to everybody? I go up to the little monitor symbol right there, and I can switch my views to show a number of different functions at the same time on my monitor, so that I can have access to my playback status, and I can take a look at the channels at the same time. So we've only got 4 queues, but well, actually, let's record a few more queues. So let's take 1 through 10, full, record queue 5, enter. I'm actually going to, over here in this playback status, you see I have a bunch of channels that are grayed out. That means I am in the channel status mode that's showing me every available channel, but I want to take a look at just the channels that I have patched in. So I'm going to go to Flexi. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm going to go over here to this group list display, and I'm going to click the virtual keyboard, and you see it's keeping it all in one side. So now I'm going to hit the Flexi key, and you see now Flexi has switched me to patched channels. So only the channels that I have patched into the system is it going to show me, which means I can see more of the channels I want to look at, you know, at the same time. So okay, let's now that we recorded this, how about we take 71 through 76 at 5. So now we put those at 50%. Maybe we want to record a queue there. Record 6, enter. So now that I've recorded Q6, maybe I want to change the time on Q6. I've already recorded the queue, but I'm still in live Q6. Can you see that? I'm working with Q6 right now. I can type time now, even though I just recorded it, and maybe change that to a 3. Maybe I want to go back now and change the timing of Q4. I can clear out my command line, and I can type in Q4 time 2, all in my command line, and you can see it'll make that change for me, even though channel 6 is still active, because I typed all that information into my command line. Okay, let's record one more queue, and let's take everything out. Let's say we're at the end of a scene, or we're at the end of an act. I want to find all of the channels that have active data. And so the key that you want to find is called Select Active. And you can see that selects everything that has a value, that has data. And I want to take that to 0, or I want to take them all out. So Select Active, out. And now I'm going to go back to my PSD list, and I'm going to record this as Q7, enter. And maybe I want that to go a little bit fast. I want that to be a 0 count. All the lights to go out all at once, a bump. So I'm going to tell it to say to record time 0, enter. So now Q7 goes out in a 0 queue. In order to go back and play these queues, I'm going to clear that out. what we want to do is to refresh this queue list and get to the top queue, or actually prior to the top queue. I'm going to go into I'm going to add a tab actually for the virtual keyboard on this side. So now I can take a look at my my queue list, and I'm going to use the Go to Queue button. So go to queue 0, because we actually don't have a queue 0. Enter. So now none of my queues are active. Can you see that in my queue stack? And we're going to assume that this is our keyboard right here, and so this is my Go button, or you can see it's also the space bar on your keyboard. And I'm going to go to the now that I know that, you can hit that. I'm going to hit it once and click Go. You can see that it's executing Q2 right now, and it's in red while it's executing. And once it finishes, you can see it goes to 100%, and it turns yellow. So I'm going to go back into my live summary patch, and you can see that we went from channels with no information in them to now these channels that were in Q2 now have that active information. So I'm going to use my space bar from now, and I'm going to go hit Go, and now I'm executing Q3. Can you see those numbers changing? So that means some of them went up, some of them went down, and some of the values stayed the same. I like to think of green like ground. Green is ground, like green's the ground, and so the queues or the values go down. Blue is like the sky, and so the values are going up. If you want to have some other mnemonic device to remember that, you're welcome to. I'm going to execute Q4. You can see those changes are being made. Some of those channels did not make any changes. If it's a blue, you see those channels are in blue. They're coming up. They were 0 in the last queue. Q6 and Q7. Everything went out. See how they all went out really quickly? Okay, so now we've played those queues. We can back up. If I've got my virtual keyboard, you can back up queues if you want to. Go to queue tends to be the easiest. So if I want to go back to Q5, I type in go to queue, Q5, hit enter. It'll back up into Q5 and execute it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the channel display color conventions. So the information that you see in these numbers, and I'll bring a graphic up here. Red means manual data. That means stuff that we're working on right now. Blue means the level is increasing from the previous queue, and we looked at that. Magenta means the level is tracked from the previous queue, or it stays the same from the previous queue. Green means that the level is decreasing from the previous queue. Orange means the level is owned by live playback. And this is a feature that you most likely won't see very often. You won't see very often what, the orange color. But orange and white and yellow are three features that you might see occasionally. Orange means the level is owned by live playback. White means the level is blocked. And yellow means the level is set by the submaster. So if you have yellow levels in your channels, the submaster is up, giving the console the values for those channels. Okay, if you have a gold outline around them, that means the channel is that is a selected channel. If it's a gold number in here, that means the channel is captured. And that means it's a channel that we're actively working on. You might wonder sometimes, why can't I get rid of a certain channel, or it won't go away? Or take a look in your summary of your tombstones and see if you don't have a channel in gold. It might be captured. And we talked a little bit earlier about Flexi channel. I'm going to go to Flexi here. Flexi means this is manual channels, which means right now I have no channels with manual data in them. Hit Flexi again. These are the show channels. So these are all of the channels in the current queue that have data in them. These are active channels, so these are the only the channels that are active in this particular queue, and we're in live Q5. If I hit Flexi again, these are channels in use. These are selected channels, which we have none. These are all channels. You see there is no designation here, and you see there's some grayed out things. These are channels numbers that we never patched. And I'm going to hit Flexi again, and these are the patched channels. And these are, this is where I like to keep the display screen, because I know at a glance which channels have data, what they've done from the previous queue, and whether or not channels are at 0. Or maybe I'm looking for a particular channel and I'm kind of searching for it in the screen. So let's see, that's Flexi channel. Those are patch channels. So this might be a good opportunity to talk for just a moment about track and queue only. This is known as a tracking console. And we spoke a little bit about what that means before. But to reiterate, tracking means a channel is on until you turn it off. And you remember back here when we were writing these queues, if 1 through 9 or 1 through 10 were at full, and we wanted them to be out in the next queue, we have to tell the system, I want these channels to be at a particular value in the next queue. If we don't act on them at all, they will track through from queue to queue at the same value they were in the previous queue. So essentially, a light is turned on. Once you turn a light on, it's on at whatever you've told the system for it to stay at 50%, for example, until you decide to turn it off. You remember channel 7, we took all the active channels and we turned them off. And then we recorded a queue with all those channels at the 0 value. I'm gonna execute those queues. So let me go. I went into queue 7. You see, we told it for all of those queues that had all those channels that were on, we told it to go to 0. And that's what tracking means. Queue only means we're only changing values in a particular queue. And when we start updating queues after we've recorded them, so you see we've been recording queues. The first time that you set channels into a queue, you record it. Any other time you make changes to it, you update the queue. And so say, for example, we want to change the values in 7. We don't want them all to go out. Maybe I want group 2 at 50%. And maybe I want 121 through 128 full. Oops, I didn't get it. 121 through 128 full. And this is the change I want to make. Q7 is already recorded. So now we want to update this queue. And so I'm going to type in update. Now we have to make a choice as to whether we want to update these values and allow them to track through the rest of the show, or do we want to update these channels and only update them in this particular queue? I've decided that I want these channels to be recorded. I'm going to go back to my virtual keyboard. I want it to be queue only. So you see I'm updating queue only and enter. And that means the changes that I have made to that particular queue won't keep tracking if I have made changes to other queues later on. Okay, so that's a little look into writing some light queues. I hope you get to do some practicing. Next time, we're going to work on special lights, non-intensity parameters. So we'll tell you how to control the features of moving lights and LEDs. Anything that doesn't just require intensity control. when we can change the color and we can change the pattern and that sort of thing, that's what we're going to work on next time. All right, see you then.